Hello and welcome to Kimber's Kitchen. Today we are going to be brewing this IPA kit mix from Wilko's and show you everything equipment wise that you're going to need. So this kit costs about £12 and comes with its own sachet of yeast. The only other ingredient that you need to make this is 1 kilo of brewing sugar, which can also be purchased from Wilko's. Now if this is the first kit that you've made, you are going to need quite a bit of equipment as well, but once you've purchased this, the only thing you're going to need to buy in future is the 2 ingredients. So that means you're going to be able to brew 40 pints of beer for roughly £14. So let's start by showing you what equipment you're going to need. So the first stage of this kit is to remove the lid off the can and stand the can in a pan of hot water 5-6 minutes. You'll notice that the liquid inside the can starts to go a lot thinner. This makes it easier to pour out of the can and into the first fermenter. So while the can's sat in the hot water, we need to boil 3.5 litres of water. So while the can's in the hot water just thinning down, we need to clean and sterilise the fermenting bucket. So what we're going to do, we're going to take 4 teaspoons of the sterilising cleaner that I showed you before, add that to the bucket. You should be able to hear it fizzing away in the background. We're just going to give it a good swirl around the bottom and the sides, put the lid back on the bucket and make sure that it's cleaned all around the sides. Just leave that in there for a few minutes, and then we need to rinse this out with clean cold water. So the can's been sat in the water for 5 minutes now. The water's also bubbling away in the pan. So I'm just going to pick the can up. I recommend using oven gloves for this, and pour it into the fermenter. Once you've poured it in, you'll notice there's still quite a lot of liquid in the bottom of the can. So what I'd recommend for this is to pour the boiling water into the can, swill it round, and then add the boiling water into it. So let's do that. Once we've added all the water in, we're going to then add the 1 kilo of brewing sugar. Sprinkle this onto the top so it doesn't all clump up into one pile. And then I'm going to use a large wooden spoon to mix this up as much as possible so it dissolves in the boiling water. Once you're happy that you've stirred all the sugar and it's dissolved, you need to now top up the bucket with cold water until it reaches 23 litres. You'll notice on the side of the bucket, just there, you just need to top it up until the water line reaches that level. So now we've filled the bucket up to 23 litres. We need to sprinkle the yeast packet, which came with the beer kit, over the top of the beer. Make sure you get it all out of the packet, it quite often sticks in the corners. And then give this a really good stirring in with the beer so it doesn't just stick on the surface. This is what's going to help ferment the sugar into alcohol. What we're then going to do is put this into the airlock hole. As you can see, it's half filled with water. When you fill it at the top, you need to make sure it's level like that. If you end up with water in this section, it can end up running back into the beer, which is not something we want. So just tap it over the sink and the water will trickle out of there, and you should end up with just half and half like that. That then goes into the top of your bucket, and that's ready to go into a warm place to ferment. Now each kit will suggest you keep the beer at a different temperature. This kit suggests 18 to 20 degrees. As you've noticed, my bucket has got this cable coming out. That's an aquarium fish tank heater. My house doesn't stay 18 to 20 degrees because I'm out at work all day. So what I do is a quick cheat, put an aquarium heater in, set the thermostat on it to 20 degrees, and it keeps the beer at a constant temperature. On the side of my bucket, I don't know if is a stick-on thermometer. As you can see at the moment, it's reading between 18 to 20 degrees, which is the perfect temperature for this beer. After a few days, you'll notice bubbles coming out of the airlock. The beer kit suggests 7 days for it to ferment. I normally tend to find it 7 to 10 days. Sometimes I even leave it for 2 weeks. You want it until there's no bubbles coming out of this at all. That's a sign that it's finished fermenting. If you want to check how strong your beer is, you're going to need what's called a hydrometer. Now what you do with this, you put it into this tube type test container and you let it bob in the liquid, and then when it settles you check where the fluid line appears. So mine comes just above 1.40, so you make a note of that on the instruction book. When you think it's finished, you take a second reading and you compare between the two. Now the kit suggests that it's got to be 1.008 when it's finished. Now there's some calculations that you can do where you take the start gravity minus the end gravity, times it by something, and you end up with the alcohol content. What it's useful for though is just to check if the beer's finished. If it's coming out above 1.008, you need to leave it a bit longer. So I've taken the beer into my cellar, just left it to one side, plugged it in so the aquarium heater's on, and now we're just going to leave it for 7 to 10 days until it's stopped bubbling. I've got a container filled with 23 litres of red wine at the side of it, which is just about finished. If you look at the airlock at the top, you can just see the air slowly moving through it. It's now taking around 20 seconds per bubble, which is quite a sign that it's nearly finished. The beer will start doing that after a few days, which you know that means fermentation started. So that's part 1 of the video done. I'll come back to you in 7 to 10 days once it's finished and we can go on to the next stage. Now while this is fermenting, you need to decide if you are going to bottle your beer or if you're going to put it in a keg. If you're having a party where you're likely to use all 40 pints in a short period of time, I'd highly recommend investing in a keg. But if it's for personal use where you want it to last a few months, you're going to need some bottles. When I'm bottling beer, I'm quite lucky that my next door neighbour owns a pub, so I ask them to save me the bottles. Every month or so he just brings me a bin bag full of bottles. If you buy these on eBay, they're about 50 pence each, and these are about 30 pence each. So if you're buying 40 bottles, it can quickly add up. So if you're going to bottle your beer, you're going to need about 40 of the larger size bottles, remembering it's 23 litres, and each of these bottles holds 500. These hold 300, so you need to just divide 23 by those so you know how many bottles you're going to need. If you decide to bottle your beers, you're going to also need some crown caps. These can be bought off eBay for about £3 for 100. Again, Wilco's do them for convenience, but they are a bit more expensive. You'll also need a capping machine. I use a bench one, and basically what you do, you put your beer underneath with the cap on, pull this down. As the lever comes down, that then would add a cap to the beer, and that's sealed like that. What you want to do then is put your beer to one side in a warm place for about 7 to 10 days, and then it'll be ready to drink, but we'll discuss that in the next section. So thanks for watching this video. Look out for part 2, which finishes off with how to bottle your beers.